Chavre, how are you? A good night of Shabbos. I hope everyone is gesund, stark, and freilich begashmis v'ruchnis. I hope everyone is healthy, strong, and happy physically and spiritually. Today is Erev Shabbos Kodesh, Behar Bechukosai, Shabbos Chazak. So, first let's give tzedakah as we started doing since the war started. We give tzedakah. G'deilat tzedakah shemakareves esagula Mashiach should come now. Then we say a prayer. And this prayer that we're going to say today is going to be connected to the subject matter, the thought of the week. And this is a pasuk from Tilim, Kapitel Amedalid, pasuk Yudalid and Tezvov. Who desires life? So the next pasuk says, Nitzel l'shein chomeiro usfosecho. Guard your tongue from evil and your lips from speaking deceitfully. So, in the world, I'm sorry, we have some svarim here that fell. By the world, I'm saying without Chassidus, we have a concept of Lashon Hara and how terrible Lashon Hara is. But today, I'm so sorry. We're going to speak about the Hasidic perspective when it comes to talking things that are not good. So in this week's parsha, we learn out the pasuk of you're not allowed to speak something which is called Einos Dvarim. The pasuk says V'loisoinu ishas hamisoi, that a person should not oppress another. And we're talking about not hurting another person with words. It's in Kapitel Chavhei, pasuk Yud Zayin in Parshas Behar. So from here we learn out what's called the Isser of Einos Dvarim. This is a prohibition, a loisa semderaisa, one of the 613. There's another specific one, in particular, talking in such a way to a ger, to a convert. But we're talking about the general Einos Dvarim, hurtful speech. So, number one, what's this special connection to the time that we're in now in Sfiras HaOmer? And number two, how does it change our life in a major fundamental way? And over here we come to the Torah concept of speech and how important speech is, and we don't realize. First of all, I just want to say, we spoke about this many before, in the world there's a thing where we say, sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. So the truth is, there is an element of truth to this saying, and that's in relation to yourself, to a person in relation to himself. If someone says something to you, you should go with the attitude that sticks and stones break my bones, but names will never hurt me. Because you're strong. But the Torah actually does not accept that when it comes in relation to another person. And not only that, the Torah goes even further. We say sticks and stones may break your bones, yeah? But names can actually kill you. In other words, if you become embarrassed, and that's what you should think when you're the one who's speaking to another person, that through your words, through your names, you're actually killing him. It's a lot worse than breaking bones. As we'll see from different Maimar Azal and saying for our sages, connected to this love of never hurting somebody through speech. Now, it's interesting, again, when we give these shiurim, we can't cover everything. I know Einos Dvarim is also concerning matters of buying and selling, if you're deceitful to somebody else. And it's so interesting that the Rambam mentions the laws of Einos Dvarim in Hilchas Mechira in Sefer Kinyan. So that's something in general which is amazing when you think about it, that it's put into Hilchas Mechira. Why couldn't the Rambam put it somewhere else also besides Hilchas Mechira when it talks about hurting another person? You know, anyways. But I just want to bring out the point that the Aveira, the Isra of Einos Dvarim, also refers to matters of buying and selling in business. Okay, so just to bring out the point of how careful you have to be, I'm going to read you this Rambam which comes from the Gemara. In the Rambam in Hilchas Mechira, Perik Yudaled, Halacha Yudches, brings from the Gemara, G'dola Einos Dvarim Einos Mammon. It's worse when you hurt somebody personally, emotionally, than when you're deceitful in money matters. Through your mouth, through speech. When it comes to money matters, so there's a way you can rectify it. If that other person lost a certain amount of money because of something that you said, so you can repay him later. So the money loss could be reinstated. That's number one. So in other words, this hurt, this prohibition, where did you do damage? In his money, in his possessions. But this was something personal. The pasuk ends off over here that you shouldn't hurt the other person. The pasuk ends off, you should fear the Hashem. And Rashi over here brings down on the spot, because you might think that if you're going to say to yourself that you didn't mean to hurt him, the Eibusher knows the truth about what's going on. Therefore the pasuk over here says, but Hakol Dover, the Rambam says, you should know any matter which has to do with your intention, whether you intentionally had in mind to hurt the other person or not, or when it comes to anywhere else where the intention matters, you should know the Eibusher knows the truth. But then the Rambam says, any person who gets hurt through your words, Hashem answers him immediately. That means from this we see how bad what you did was, that person is a serious victim because he was hurt or embarrassed, and the Eibusher answers, Hashem. Anyways, my point that I want to bring out is like this. So, sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. So over here we see that the Torah says wrong in two ways. Number one, when it comes to when it comes to money, possessions, so right away you can rectify it. But when it comes to a hurt that you did for another person, you can't rectify it. How are you going to rectify it? Number one, necessarily. And number two, the physical possession deficit is something that could only be for a couple of days. Forget it. It's ha-ba-ha. This could rectify, this you can't rectify. But another thing, this is something that could only last a couple of days, and this could last for a lifetime. The scars that you inflicted, the pain that you made him feel, this is something that he might never forget, God forbid. So therefore we have to be very, very careful when it comes to our speech. Now, in addition to that, since we're saying that it has to do with embarrassing, so we know, and there's a Gemara, and the Gemara says that when you embarrass somebody, it's as if you killed him. It's a famous Gemara in Bava Metzia, Kol HaMalbum Chavei Berabim. Whoever embarrasses his friend Berabim, Kilu Shefer Damim, is as if you murdered him. Now, together with this, we say that we know that when it comes to three Avedas, we say Yehorig Val Yaver. You have to rather die than commit these sins. Shvichas Damim, murder, Aveda Zara, idolatry, and Arayas, illicit relations. So actually, the Gemara actually says that thing. And there's a Gemara in Saita which says, so it's amazing because we just celebrated like Baimus, so we're still living with the spirit of Shimon ben Yochai. Listen to what Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai says over here. You'll be shaking. It's better for the person. It's better for the person to allow himself to be burnt alive. Than to embarrass another person publicly. Wow. And just you think about that image. I think if a person thought about this Maimar Azal, his whole attitude towards others would change completely. And the Gemara says, we learn out from Tamar. We're not getting into that story. Maybe another time we'll speak about it. That she was silent, even though she was sentenced to be burnt, rather than embarrass Yehuda. Anyways, in any case, so we see over here to what degree we have to be careful about not transgressing Einoas Dvarim, hurting someone else through our words. Now, let's get to the root of it, And here we come to what I started in the beginning today by saying how the approach of Chassidus enlightens everything in a whole different manner. But first, as usual, when you read the Chinuch, which I believe the Sefer HaChinuch really has Soidus HaTorah hidden over there, because we see every time when we look into the Chinuch, it triggers layers and layers of depth and profundity that you won't find maybe somewhere else. And the Chinuch just puts it in 2 lines. Shoyrish mitzvah zu yedua. It's known what the point, the root of this mitzvah is. Ki ulosei sholem ben abriyos, to bring peace amongst the creations. And v'godol hasholem shebay habracha mitzuyim ba'olam, through peace, blessings are brought to the world. And v'kosha machlekes, and how harsh arguments and disputes are and fighting. Kama klolis v'kama takolis tlizba, so many curses and so many bad things happen because of it. And this is another connection to the parsha. Parshas, we spoke Parshas Behar, is where it says the lav of not hurting somebody with words. And Parshas Bechukosai talks about the blessings and the opposite of blessings that come about. So here we see the blessings that come about through speaking positively, and there are things that come about when, if we do the opposite of blessings. So first of all, what does the Chinuch say? The Chinuch says that it's about shalom with the brios. And this is the key word over here, brios. It's how you look at the other person. Once you look at him that he's brios, then everything will change. But first, let's go to a famous line with Alter Rebbe says in the הקודש, Simon Chav Beis, and we mentioned this at the end. And again, I don't want to elaborate. We definitely mentioned this before in another shir in the last couple of years, where the Alter Rebbe talks about Lashon Hara, and he implores the people that you should make sure Al Kein Ahuva Yedidai No V'no L'Trei B'chol Lev V'nefesh L'Tkoya Havas Re'eu B'Liboy. Work very, very hard in engraving love between yourselves. V'ishas Ro'es Re'eu Al Tachshevu B'Lvavchem. Ksiv. Do not think evil about another person. V'leisala Lev Le'elom. Never. V'leisala V'im Tali Yatfenu M'Liboy Kihindev Oshen. U'kamoi Machshavas Avei Zara Mamish. I'm not allowed to bring you over there. Look up yourself. You get us HaKodesh, the end of Chav Beis. But Kigdeilu Lashon Hara Keneged Avei Zara V'Gilei Arayos Shvichas Damim. There's no time now, I'm sorry. My main point I want to bring out is V'im B'dibra Kach, if this is true concerning speech, Lashon Hara. So then Chuli, all the more so when it comes to Machshava Hara, thinking bad. Ukvar Noida L'chol Chacham Leiv, every wise person knows Yisrein Hechsher HaMachshava, the superiority of thought, ala dibur, over speech. So the point is, this is the message I want to take for today, is that if we start talking about a noise dvarim, or you could say Lashon Hara, in truth, in the perspective of Chassidus Chabad, and the way of Chassidus is, if we're going to just speak about the idea of Lashon Hara, it might be more difficult because inside, the way you view the other person, mentally, you still think of negatively about that person. You're looking at him in a critical, negative way. So therefore, work on yourself, do the brain surgery, turn the switch, the knob, make a shift in perspective, and then automatically you won't come to Lashon Hara because you see him in a different light. Once you see him in a different light, obviously you'll speak about him in a different way. And that's why we have the Chinuch, who says the root of the mitzvah is shalom between the Brias. And what does it mean, shalom between the Brias? As the Alter Rebbe brings in chapter 32 of Tanya, see there, Perek Lev, he explains what the Mishnah means, that Aaron was oyev shalom, v'roidev shalom, oyev es habriyos. And the Alter Rebbe says, amoyre de kavart. The literal translation of Oyes Habriyos means love creations, which means you see how every person, Chovev Adam Shenivra B'Tzelem Chviv Yisrael, you see how Hashem is the source of life for this person, and therefore you recognize, you acknowledge, and you try to bring it up to your consciousness, the spark of Hashem in that person. And once you view that person and you see the spark of Hashem, the spark of divinity in that person, so automatically you speak differently to that person. The respect is different to that person. So therefore, we understand that the root of the lav, of not hurting another person, is because once you see the person as a chelik alikami mal mamish, as a dvar avaya, how could you offend that person? That person's worthiness is infinite. So automatically, you're not going to want to hurt that person. That person is special. No matter how much you're going to talk about that person positively, it's not enough. Because we're talking about mamish, infinity of Hashem. That's in Him, that's giving Him life. And that's what we have to tap into and try to recognize and acknowledge when we're dealing with a person. And that's the first part of what the Sefer HaNebuchim says, that it's brios. And then he says you have to realize that all the blessings and everything, also like the Alter Rebbe says in chapter 32, Barcheinu Avinu Kulonu Ke'echad. Once we discuss whatever's going on in the world, anywhere, anytime, any place, and we understand that the conduit to change the world is always going to be through Avos Yisrael, through issues of Shalom. Shalom is going to bring Shalom on every single level. So therefore this gives us a whole new vitality and the whole new energy in the mitzvah of, as Dvarim, as we speak about it today. Now, just to add a couple of points. Number one, I don't like getting into these issues because who am I? But I'm just mentioning, for some people have to hear this, and each one should take it on their level, and we could always improve in certain areas. But in the laws of Anois Dvarim is also mentioned the idea of respect for your wife. It makes a special point of that. A man should be very, very careful when it comes to speaking, how he speaks to his wife, not to oppress her verbally. Because this is the Lashon that's brought down, because her tears are readily available. They get hurt. They're more sensitive. Some people are sensitive. And according to Shulchan Aruch, you should treat your wife that she is sensitive. And you should be very, very careful. If you cause, according to what it says over here, if you cause your wife to cry, then you possibly transgressed the Nois Dvarim. This is the message. Be very careful not to cause your wife to cry. Okay, anyways. So the point is, and we're going to say a couple of stories again to bring out this point, but let's translate it practically speaking. I'm talking now as a teacher and an educator, but we see clearly that when you're dealing with people and you compliment them, say something good, a good word, how it elevates the person and lifts him up like nothing else. And it already establishes the relationship in a much better way. They say concerning conversationalists, somebody said a line, I forgot where it comes from. It says, to be interesting, be interested. Be interested. Which means, like you talk about certain personalities, say, he's interesting. You want a personality. You like a conversationalist. Guess what? The irony is of this saying, to be interesting, be interested. Which means the people that are into bringing out the other person, and when they're talking to him, the other person feels that you are interested in him. Those are the people who ultimately are the most interesting, because they're not full of ego. Who wants to listen to somebody who's always full of himself, etc., etc.? And just to bring the other extreme with dealing with the ultimate levels, as we spoke many times about the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin, anyone who came into their Daled Amos, into the Yechidus, or they went to visit the Rebbetzin, always it starts the same story. The Rebbe, the Rebbetzin, they would ask you, what do you do for a living? How's your life? What's going on? They totally invested themselves in the other person's life and the other person's reality. And this is like, we learned this, Einoas Dvarim is hurting somebody, right? So now, let's speak in the positive. What's the opposite of Einoas Dvarim? The opposite of Einoas Dvarim, which means empowerment. Think, could you imagine if you thought to yourself all day, every day, when you encounter a person, I'm going to say something to that person that would lift him up and to make him empowered. So every time when you're encountering a person, coming into contact, you should ask yourself that question. This is the question. Is he going to walk away from this encounter empowered and uplifted? Or the opposite? Is he going to walk away from this encounter feeling hurt, etc.? So this is something we should always remember. And this is a key to your success in general in dealing with people and relationships with people. There's two stories that are very connected to this concept. One story I'm sure we said before, and that's a story which is printed in Ayim Yom Chof Tes Tishrei. I'm going to repeat it again. I'm sure I said it before. And there was one time an argument in Shul in Mezhebush, and one of the person who was arguing with another person screamed at him, "You know what? I could tear you up like a fish." That was the words that he said. Words, speech. And the Baal Shem Tov was there and he heard it, and then he gathered his students and he made them go into a circle and they were holding on to each other, and he told them, "Close your eyes." They closed their eyes and all of a sudden they started screaming because they saw visually how this person was actually ripping apart the body of the person who said to him, "I could rip you apart like a fish." And the point of this story was to teach us that when we say those words, even though it's words, and we said before the way some people think sticks and stones may break my bones, wrong. Words also are breaking your bones and could tear you apart. Not only they're murdering you possibly because they embarrass you like we said before, but even more than that, automatically what you said, even if that person's not offended. This is the chidush. If you tell another person, "I could kill you," even if that other person doesn't get offended, nevertheless, on a certain realm, that's what Ayim Yom teaches us, see it over there, on a certain realm, in a certain level, on some layer of existence, it's happening. And therefore we have to be so cautious, so careful when it comes to our speech. By the way, the Rebbe, when it comes to speech, was the most extreme. You can't even imagine the degrees of the Rebbe's being cautious when it came to his speech, like nobody else. And he never said the word death. It was always Hepech HaChaim, the opposite of life, and so on and so forth. There's hundreds of examples of different words. I remember once the Rebbe said, speaking about Klippas Nega, and then he says, "Und the Klippas v'zeh lamata mizeh," and the Klippas that are lower. He didn't want to say Sholos Klippas HaTmeyes. He didn't want to say the word Tmeyes. And so on and so forth. The Rebbe was so careful. I wish, someone should make a speech just to give all the examples of how the Rebbe was so careful in his speech. Anyways, the other story that I wanted to say was about, this is another story famous, which I've never mentioned before, I don't think, that the Frierdiker Rebbe had a Seder in his apartment, a Seder for Pesach. And there was a guest over there, and there was some Chassidim there, and there was a guest. Now, by Chabad, the minig is no gebracht. You don't have any liquid next to a matzah, and you can't have matzah in your mouth together with water. There's all these laws, precautions about gebracht. And people on Pesach are very, very careful, super careful when it comes to their religious strictness and being cautious, etc. Anyways, there was somebody that was by the Frierdiker Rebbe's table, and this the Frierdiker Rebbe himself was the top level of zihirus and being careful on these things. And there was a guest who was there who was not really of Chabad persuasion, and he sat there by the table and he took a matzah and he put the matzah in the borscht. Borscht is like a red liquid made of beets. It could be a dish also that was made from beets, beetroot. So this person took the matzah and put it into the beetroot, and people that were sitting by the table going, "No," something like that. Like they're getting upset. "What are you doing? You can't do this." And the Frierdiker Rebbe said a line I don't know if it was that person heard it or not, but this is the way the story goes, that the Friedrich Rebbe said, Besser soll sein areite Matze wie areite Ponim. It's better if the matzah is red, which means this person transgressed the borscht, and he put the gebracht, and he put the matzah into red liquid. Better the matzah should be red than his face should turn red. If you embarrass him like that, and he could turn red. So we say that when you embarrass somebody, it's like committing murder. It says in two places. Some place it says, if I remember correctly, because the blood goes out of him, his face turns white when he becomes embarrassed. Sometimes it says his face turns red when he becomes embarrassed. But either case, when you embarrass somebody, it's like you're committing murder. Hashem Rachman al-Tzlan. This Shabbos is Chavov Ir, which is also the Yortzeit. Yom Elula of Reb Eisel Homener, one of the greatest Chassidim that ever lived, the Rav Chosed, the Rav Tzadik, and it's Yisoid Shabi Yisoid. So Yisoid Shabi Yisoid in Sfiras Haima means the idea of communicating, bonding, connecting. And obviously, the most common way that we connect to another person is through our speech. So therefore, we should all work on our Yisoid Shabisoid. If you want to be a successful communicator, if you want to be successful in your relationships, if you want to be a blessing to the world, think, ponder deeply about everything we spoke today, about the love of Eino's Dvarim, and they should help. We should all improve on our Yisoid Shabi Yisoid, which will bring brachas to us and to Gans Kal Yisrael, U'B'cheinu Avinu Kolona Ke'echad, Begula Mitzvah Shleima, take it from Yad Mamish, posting from my home, Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach, your man in Melbourne.